Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to a video on the channel. What we have for you today is our wildcard video going into game week 2. I will just say that, it is very early to wildcard for your team, but a lot of people do it after seeing game week 1 and their team is nowhere near as good as they thought it would be, and they feel like they need to make lots of changes. Maybe your players haven't been playing and you expected them to start in game week 1, or maybe you've got some injuries. I will just say that, you did spend a lot of time on your team probably, planning for not just game week 1, but for the first few game weeks when you're looking at your fixtures for your team before the season. So maybe give them a bit of a chance on the whole. But, at least this video might be interesting and you could maybe just, make one or two changes based on the information we're going to give you. So if you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. It's been fantastic, the support so far this season, especially on such a small channel. And let's get into it. So the team we're going to start with here, in goal we're going with Onana and Turner. So for me, I wouldn't be making goalkeeper transfers. I think a classic example of chasing points would be like someone from Pickford to Leno. You look at how many points Leno's got and you think he's going to get it every week. And it's like saying, well, you got Pickford in and really Everton aren't going to keep clean sheets every week. You got him in because he was 4.5 million. And, you've got to sort of temper your expectations with reality and say that Fulham and Everton are both probably going to get as many clean sheets over the season as each other. So I wouldn't necessarily be making single transfers on your goalkeepers at all. But if you are wildcarding, I would go with Onana. Like, yeah, he's not going to keep as many saves as he did last night, and he's not going to be, keeping clean sheets necessarily every week, but he is playing for a top four team, and he is cheaper than the other top four team goalkeepers. So I think that is worth, thinking if you do want your keeper to keep more clean sheets or more often than not, get a keeper that's going to play for a top four team or give or take top four team, and he is the cheapest one. So I think he is a good shout. And Matt Turner is someone that's going to be playing for Nottingham Forest, and he's 4 million. So if you're going to get a 4 million cheapest goalkeeper in, you might as well get someone that starts for their team. And then if something does happen or you want to rotate, it gives you good options. In defence, I've gone with Chilwell and Reece James. Now, for me, I think it's absolutely worth the double up based on the first game week information. Now, this is one of those game weeks where you could be looking at game week 1 and actually using the information to your benefit, because we weren't sure about Chelsea going into game week 1. We've had a look, we've seen them play once, and Chilwell was so attacking. I think you get him in. I think if you've got one and you've got no other transfer to make in your team, I think you're more than capable of rolling a transfer for game week 3. But if you wanted to make a defensive change, I think getting the other one in and doubling up is absolutely worth it. Chelsea's fixtures do look all right from a defensive point of view, at least. And I think, both of these showed that they were very attacking in game week 1. I'm going to round out the defence, at least the starting defence, by putting in Saliba. Now, this isn't a knee-jerk transfer based on game week 1, and you don't want to think like, oh, Saliba got an assist in game week 1. Well, he only got one assist the whole of last season. So, based on game week 1, he's not going to get 38 assists this season, is he? He's probably only going to get one or two, and that's, don't go point chasing. He's in my team because or this wildcard team, because he is the most likely Arsenal defender to start. He's probably Arsenal's strongest defender, therefore he's going to be in the team, almost every game week. So I think people are a lot pointed that Gabriel didn't start in the game week 1. We did talk about that before and how he is someone that could be rotated out. I think if you've got maybe Aston Villa defenders, I wouldn't necessarily panic based on game week 1, but I would maybe not double up on them if you were making a wildcard team. In my bench, I've gone with Ake and Rico Henry. Now, Ake is someone that, he's just as likely to start as any other Man City defender. Now, a lot of people were disappointed that Diaz and Stones didn't start for Man City. For me, Ake is left-footed, and Pep likes left-footed defenders on the left side, so he's competing against a smaller amount of defenders for that position, and he is 0.5 million cheaper than pretty much every other Man City defender. So I would say that he is, not less risk, but you are tying up less funds by getting him in. Rico Henry is someone that got an assist again in game week 1, and he's somebody that plays for Brentford who've got good fixtures coming forward, and he is 4.5 million. So I think that is a good shout to get as a cheaper option on your bench. I will just say, people like the look of Spurs. I would stay away from Spurs defenders They actually have 9 defenders listed at 4.5 million. So that tells you that FPL really aren't sure on who's going to play it. Otherwise, some would be more expensive than others. So it looks to be a lot of rotation possibly in there. Or at least we're not sure of who's going to be playing consistently. I also think Spurs defence does need a bit of work on it as well. So I would just stay away from there for now. In midfield, we've gone with Saka and Martinelli. Now, Saka's actually gone up in price as we're recording this video. But I think if you were going to downgrade and swap one of them out, if you didn't have Saka already, which I'm sure a lot of you do, I would swap out Martinelli for someone at 7.5 or 7 million. Maybe you did want a Man City midfielder. Maybe you wanted someone like Richarlison just to get in your team. I would swap out Martinelli for them if you couldn't make the money stretch. But I would definitely keep hold of Saka or get Saka in. Sometimes you think, oh, price increase, I've missed out on it. That's not the case at all. If you can afford them, if you were going to get them at 8.5 million, you're probably still going to want to get them at 8.6 million. It's not like, oh, that's too expensive now. You've not lost anything by missing out on a price range as long as you can still afford it elsewhere in your team. I've also gone with Mbeumo. I think he is someone that's played a full 90 minutes for Brentford and he's on penalties. You look at someone like Visser up front, he got subbed off early. I think Mbeumo is someone that's pretty much guaranteed as he can be to play 90 minutes every game week. 6.5 million to have a midfielder playing up front. I think it's just like having an extra striker in your team. I think he's absolutely a great shout. I went with Maddison as well from Spurs, 2 assists in game week 1, and it's a bit like the Chelsea picks here. I think that he's someone that you can react to actually playing as a central part of Spurs, linking everything together. Looks like he's on a lot of set pieces. And I think that's not necessarily a knee-jerk reaction to get Maddison in. I think that's using game week 1 information to your knowledge and to your power to react as quick as you can and maximise points for next game week. So if you were making a single transfer, I think Maddison in midfield is a good shout as well. I've put Rashford in here. I think as we're looking at Man United last night, and I think he did look a little bit isolated, maybe a little bit sluggish as well. But he is a fantastic player, and he is someone that we know is going to do well in Ten Hag's system over the course of the game weeks and the season. He is a classic example, like we said at the start of the video, of not just getting someone out based on one game week. He is someone that over the course of the season is going to be getting more points more often than not. At 9 million, that's a great price point because he's someone that I think is a lot cheaper than your premium midfielders and attackers. And he's, like we said with Onana, he's playing for a top 4, potentially top 4 team. So they're going to be winning games more often than not as well. Up front, I've gone with Haaland and Alvarez. So for me, I think if you're going to get in a Man City midfielder for like 7.5 or 7 million, maybe 8 million, I think why not look at getting someone like Alvarez in at 6.5 million? There's so many good mid-price options in midfield, and if you're worried about Man City's rotation, and you don't want to take up a midfield slot, the attacking strength is a lot less in depth than the midfield position, I think, in FPL. I think people think Alvarez is going to be competing against Haaland for minutes in Fantasy League, but that's often not the case. He either plays out wide or he could be playing, instead of De Bruyne, or he plays up front with Haaland. And I think at 6.5 million, he is a cheaper Man City option. So, like we said with Ake, you're tying up less money in your fantasy league team with Man City players. So if he is rotated out or he doesn't play one game week, then I think you're not going to be as disappointed as if you had somebody else. Obviously, there's still that rotation risk, but I think he's worth a shout in an attacking position. The last player we've got is João Pedro from Brighton. Now, I think if you were making one transfer, I'd probably stay away from João Pedro. I think Brighton have a lot of attacking options. And I think if you are wildcarding though, he may be worth having a player that you might be getting in your team. 5.5 million again, spread the funds out quite well, I think, with this team. I put it into Fantasy Football Hub, their team rating system. Shout out to them, and it came out as 93%. Now I'm sure you can maybe find wildcard teams that are higher rated, but I don't think you could find many wildcard teams that are as well rounded as what we've got here. The value is 100 million or 100.1 million now with Saka's price increase. I think if you can always swap out some of the players, like we said with Martinelli. You could also swap out João Pedro for someone like Morris from Luton Town. They got a goal. He got the goal against Brighton. Luton's fixtures from an attacking point of view after Chelsea don't look that bad. You know, you've got Fulham, Wolves, Everton, and Forest in as some of the next, few game weeks. They're all games that Luton could score against. So I think there's an option if you did think about that. I think as well, if you swap someone like João Pedro for Morris from Luton, how often are you going to use your third bench player? So there is a possibility, while some prices have gone up, you can very easily make it work for your team in terms of just having like the cheapest player possible as your third bench option. So the strength is though that there's a strong bench. I think that is something where if a player didn't play in your starting 11, you wouldn't have a problem with any of the players on the bench here coming in. And if you are worried about rotation risk, I think it's something that is, sort of nullified by having a strong bench. I would just say that if you were, like we said, we were struggling for funds, don't worry about your third bench option. You're hardly ever going to get to use them. There are players from top teams in here as well. Like we said, if you're going to be playing players that from teams that are going to be challenging for top four, they're probably going to do well more often than not in your team. If you're going to be picking players from sort of Everton, Fulham, players at West Ham, the teams that are maybe going to be mid to low table in the league, I think you're not going to have that same consistency. For me, weaknesses in the team is that there's no money left in the bank, so I would have to downgrade someone from this team in order to upgrade elsewhere. And there are selection headaches as well, which you might think, oh, what a nice problem to have, but it is really frustrating if you at the end of the game week, you look at your bench and you've got like 10 points on your bench and your starting players, you've got players that have scored 1 or 2 points in your starting 11 and you're thinking, oh, what could have been? I could have, really got a good rank this game week if I'd just started so and so over there, over the player I did start. So I think it is worth, just maybe having cheaper options on the bench and upgrading your starting 11. As long as you've got 1 or 2 players you'd be happy to bring in, I think that's good enough. So yeah, let me know what you're thinking of the team I've got here. How did your game week 1 go? Are you wildcarding for game week 2? And if so, there's some players that you think you would never put in your team that I've put in my team. If you are interested in 5 players to avoid putting in your game week 2 team as a knee jerk from game week 1, the video should be on the screen now. Please do like and subscribe. It's really appreciated the amount of support we've had so far this season. Hopefully, we can keep it going, and I will see you in the next one.